Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 886. Preparations before leaving. After some consideration, Klein, who already had such a plan, smoothly cleared up his thoughts and decided on his plan of action. Pa! He flicked the piece of paper in his right hand, looking up from the soaring scarlet flames at Rionette Tinker. He planned on taking out a lone gold coin to provide payment. However, Miss Messenger had already left. There was no one in front of him. Not collecting payment? Klein was first taken aback before he made the connection. He suspected that Rionette Tinker had proactively asked for payment after being used to collecting gold coins from non-contractees. Perhaps Miss Messenger didn't say anything, she just stared at Leonard with those 8 eyes on the foreheads of hers while waiting for him to pay the gold coin. Yet this fellow didn't realize it at all, trying to forcefully end the summon, only to have his neck snapped. Klein hissed in alarm as he used the gold coin he had just taken out to do the divination. He received the result that Leonard Miss Messenger was still alive and doing fine. He breathed a sigh of relief, put away the gold coin, and called out, "Richardson!" The half-open room's door opened without a sound as Richardson walked in and politely asked, "Sir, how may I be of service? Please bring the butler here." As Klein instructed, he sighed inwardly. He had really been spoiled by the luxurious life. Even when getting someone at home, he wouldn't take even half a step. He had to do it through his valet. "Well, this is an acting requirement," he said silently to himself. Minutes later, the white-gloved Walter came to the 3rd floor and let his arms hang to his side. He stood in a standard posture to the side of Dwayne Dantes, awaiting his employer's instructions. Klein had already considered his words, so he unhurriedly said, "Go to Member of Parliament Mock's place to inform him that I've prepared the first installment. Also, prepare a carriage. I will be heading to the Bursary Foundation in the morning and will return in the afternoon. If Member of Parliament Mock doesn't have time for me in the afternoon, head over to Dr. Aaron's place, saying that I'll pay a visit in the afternoon." Klein had already taken out £10,000 from above the grey fog and had stored it in a tiny leather briefcase. He was waiting for the opportune time to complete the preparation work of the arms deal transaction. And to air the cache of the grey fog smell, he had deliberately teleported to the sea, feeding creeping hunger in passing. He was afraid that Amon, who also knew of the grey fog's existence, would detect the special smell while being in the same city, thus seeking out the location of the treasure he was yearning for. "All right, sir." Walter didn't ask his employer how he had gathered the first installment. If memory served him right, Dwayne Dantes hadn't been to the bank recently. Of course, this wasn't something to be bothered with. Often foreigners, especially tycoons from Desi or Mid-Seashire, would prepare briefcases filled with large sums of money ahead of time. 22 Phelps Street, Lone Charity Bursary Foundation Headquarters. Klein walked through the main door and went straight to the 2nd floor where he found the reception room for directors. As an honorary director who occasionally participated in certain work, he didn't have an office here, but he could use the reception room. He clenched his right hand into a fist and held it to his mouth, deliberately coughing before stepping into the reception room. In there, he sat on the sofa. After a short wait, he stood up again and said to Richardson, who was waiting beside him, "I'll first head to the washroom." After buttoning his coat, Klein stepped out of the room and happened to meet Justice Audrey walking out of her own office. This noble lady was wearing a rather simple dress today. It was white adorned with dark green. Her sleeves and collars had frills, and at her chest were layers of intercrossed lace that formed a bow tie-like flower. She didn't even wear any jewelry. She had a girdle which he couldn't tell, but near her left arm, her clothes clung to her skin when the wind blew, allowing a slight protrusion to appear. "Good morning, Miss Audrey." Klein wore a look of pleasant surprise as though it was a chance encounter. Audrey glanced at the good-looking Dwayne Dantes with gray sideburns and replied with a smile, "Good morning, Mr. Dantes." She had wanted to cheerfully say, "Long time no see," to snide at him for not being to the Bursary Foundation ever since the opening ceremony. But considering how their relationship was that of acquaintances, she held back from saying such words. Klein rubbed his temples and shook his head with a wry smile. I'm very sorry that I'm only coming today. I've been very busy recently. I can foresee myself being even busier in time to come. I might make a trip to the southern continent to handle certain matters. The reason why he specially came was that he wanted to inform Miss Justice that he was leaving Backland for some time. It was to express his sincerity, hoping that this noble lady could help him watch the Bursary Foundation and allow it to be operated smoothly. To Klein, he wished from the bottom of his heart that the Bursary Foundation could help more of the poor that required assistance. Southern Continent? Audrey interpreted the sincerity in Dwayne Dantes' words as she asked in surprise. Klein laughed and replied, For business. At that instant, the first thought that came to Audrey's mind was, which Sequence 5 is about to lose his life? Upon sensing Miss Justice making some unpleasant assumptions, Klein added, It's a partnership with the military for the sale of some necessities. What's the meaning behind this? Dwayne Dantes' identity is used to probe intel from the military? Audrey was somewhat enlightened as she raised her right hand and gestured 4 times in a clockwise fashion. She said with a bright smile, May the goddess bless you so that everything goes smoothly. After habitually saying that, she sensed that there was something discordant about that. She had wished that the goddess would bless a blessed of Mr. Fool. This is probably closer to a curse, right? Will Mr. Gehrman Sparrow be angry? No, he's actually a kind-hearted person deep down. And I did it without any malicious intent. The one who returns from the southern continent is probably another blessed who's playing Dwayne Dantes, right? Will it be a demigod? Audrey didn't notice it as her thoughts wandered. Klein gave an exasperated smile as he equally drew the crimson moon on his chest in a familiar manner. May the goddess bless us all. And that she doesn't smite us with divine punishment, he added silently. Following that, he spoke as though it was a casual chat. Have you been going to the schools to do some promotions lately? Yes. When this was mentioned, Audrey's expression seemed to radiate. She was proud and happy that she had finally done something substantial. Just as she nodded with some strength, her green eyes revealed a look of sadness. After visiting a few public primary schools, I found many of the children there very pitiful. To save money, they bring their own rye bread for lunch, matching it with a cup of water. Upon saying that, she looked at Dwayne Dantes and said, somewhat embarrassed, I know that they're temporarily not bringing me along to the night schools and Sunday schools to prevent me from seeing something worse. But I can imagine things just like those workers who can only live for a few years once they start working at the factories. This was something that the World Gehrman Sparrow had once told her. It was the first time she knew of the real situation of the lower class of Backland, but having not seen them with her own eyes, all she could do was rely on her imagination. Klein sighed and said, Perhaps it's worse than you can imagine. There's no need to worry. Once you showcase your ability and win their trust, you will become one of them. Okay. Audrey nodded, as though in thought about how she could showcase herself better. Klein didn't continue on the conversation. After all, this was only their 3rd meeting. They had only exchanged a few words previously, so having too long a conversation easily garnered suspicion. He pointed at the washroom and apologized before opening up his gate to walk over. Audrey looked at Dwayne Dantes' back and fell silent as she muttered, What will it be like if it's worse? After receiving a reply from Macht, inviting him to the East Balam Military Veterans Mess in the evening, Klein followed his plan. Hence, he visited Dr. Aaron at 4 in the afternoon. Mr. Dantes, your butler didn't inform me of the reason for your visit. As his wife was about a month from being due, Dr. Aaron had declined most of his work, and most of the time he had stayed at home. Towards the sudden visit of Dwayne Dantes, who he wasn't too familiar with, he was rather perplexed. Furthermore, with him not being good at interpersonal relationships, he posed the question after exchanging some pleasantries. Klein smiled. This is the thing. I might be heading to the southern continent soon. As you know, the weather there is humid and hot. There are all kinds of insects and diseases there. I wish to prepare some medicine ahead of time to prevent any accidents from happening. I wonder if you have any suggestions. I'm really sorry, but you are the only excellent doctor I know of. Dr. Aaron accepted his explanation and began seriously thinking before giving him the names of some medicine. Towards the end, Klein, who had written a note filled with words, used the excuse of a stomachache to use the washroom on the first floor. The washroom's mirror suddenly darkened as though it was covered by a thick shadow. And in the middle of the shadow, a black pram slowly steered near. In it was a blurry child wrapped in silver silk. What is it this time? Will Ossipton questioned using his bright voice. Klein coughed dryly and forced a smile. You should have heard that I'll be heading to the southern continent. I don't wish to miss your birth, so I would like to know when you plan to have your birthday. Will Ossipton sucked at his thumb and said, I don't know. Even an angel can't control when he will be born? Klein asked in surprise. Will Ossipton replied hesitantly, You don't understand. I've already identified 3 dates. They have unique meaning when it comes to fate, but I haven't decided. I still find it blurry. Perhaps only when the time comes will I suddenly understand what I should do. Is this decidophobia? It also gives the strong vibes of a charlatan. Klein crossed his hands and indiscernibly rubbed them. Then how would I be able to receive notice in time so that I can return in time to complete the transaction with you? Oh, that paper crane can no longer be used.